All right, this is the after chapter discussion for Interlude the Grove. I'm Mr. Wheels, and I will be co hosting with Asteria, who will be joining in a little bit. But outside of that, let's just get into things and see what everyone's general impression on the chapter was. This was on the shorter side of the chapters. It was only 27,000 words, which, yes, that's short chapters for us here. The Wandering Inn. Oh my goodness. It's wild. But overall, I really did enjoy this chapter. I think it was like an 8.5, 9 out of 10 for me. I loved seeing Rusferi kind of like just have a heart, basically. Rusferi has slowly but surely been becoming one of my favorite characters, and him, his attitude here and what he did here, it was just great to see. I also love seeing the Enforced Pact, the Chessmaster's Wrath from Lionette. Like, that's such a cool skill. Such a cool skill. Otherwise, Lionette just did perfectly here with getting the Glade Lords on her side. Um, Additionally, we saw Heathen and Nanette like kind of have their dreams crushed, which was it was something. It was something. Uh, and just like seeing the Glade Lords be basically just no better than the pettiest human kings you can think of, kings and queens you can think of, rulers basically. It's just like, okay, these guys are. No wonder the great forests were destroyed if these guys were representations of what the other trees of the great forest were like. But yeah, it was a very interesting chapter. We got a bunch of lore drops too, which we'll discuss later. But that was my general impression. Let's move on to some people from chat. Bleach Soul, you're up.
Hey, yeah, it was great chapter. I mean, there's so much to really think about, like with the lore drops, deep water, and uh, oh my man, there was so many things. It's an amazing chapter. I also liked the development for Heathen and yeah, and how he looks at things now differently. Same with Nanette, and I liked how Lionette's taken charge and learning lots of things. I mean, and developing as a character. She was missing in Volume 9, so I'm really glad that she's getting more attention and more word counts for her to develop. Also, Risveri's, I felt sad for him. Uh, yes, because he felt like lonely. He really wanted to avoid like conflict because he felt for them and he wanted to help them with that. But they couldn't be reasoned with. Uh, yes, as for I also liked how Bird's strategy is at war failed. It's the first time it fails, but hey, it's nice when it meets like very unreasonable people. Yes, so all in all, actually, I really, uh, I really liked the chapter. And by the way, I will just say one thing, like the thing with Oteslia's tree. I think it's like almost dead because they used it to hatch the dragon egg.
Mm-hmm.
So they used a lot of energy from it. Yes. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Bleach Soul. Yeah, it was fascinating seeing Rusferi just be very obedient. Like he's trying his hardest to give them the benefit of the doubt when he never does that for anyone. This is the first time we've really seen him ever do that kind of thing, and it kind of bit him in the ass because these people were not deserving of that at all compared to pretty much anyone else he's met. So it's like he's trying to give them all this benefit of the doubt, and was not working, and it's all just because of his the person he considers his mother, Phithia. Just her influence on him and how much he misses her, and it's just like really sad to see. And it's also great to see. Yeah, I love the wrist fairy parts. Just love them. Um, yeah, you wanted to speak.
Yes, sir. Okay, my general impression, I was very happy with the chapter. Not like, I suppose a lot happened, but at the same time, not a lot happened because we found like it was what it was the perfect interlude because it was like one off, right? Like you go in, you have an issue, you solve the issue, and by the end of it, you have some plot progression, but it's like on a side thing of its own. So that was really nice. Um, I loved all. I like how Lynette is fine, becoming a bona fide authority figure on her own, somebody who's actually respected by people who've lived for thousands and thousands of years. That was really nice. My favorite thing, what I really, really loved, uh, so my theories are pretty out there, right? And I like to throw in a lot of theories. And somehow, Pirate always does something I could never even have imagined, despite my out there theories. Like, they always have a way of sort of bamboozling you. So, I love those chapters where I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I know what happened. Oh my god, that did not happen at all the way I expected it to happen. That was really nice. And overall, great chapter. I appreciated the lore. Now we know there's another dragon who's probably sleeping, a female dragon of war. So we know that that's there, that's happening. Probably gonna make an entrance sometime soon. Like we got a lot of implications that such a dragon exists. Like Teriak always said that, there's one more person. But yeah, now we know who it is. And yeah, it was good information for a lot of things, a lot of old things, not necessarily a lot of resolutions, but interesting enough to make or important enough to make the story a little bit more interesting. My favorite characters and my favorite moments, of course, the moment where Heathen and Nanette get like a reality check of what it means like to be an adult. And I don't know at what point it happened to me, but I do remember it happening at some point where I'm like, adults are just adults are just like kids in a bigger body. Like there's not, of course, there's a little bit more of brain development, but with that brain development comes not not always nuance. It's not nuance that comes with this brain development. There's also a lot of noise and just nonsense that comes with the added brain development of time. So that realization hitting the kids at the right age, like 14, 13, that's about where they are, right? So from it was very nostalgic in a way because you can see the sort of veil of adulthood being lifted and there's nothing really there. One thing that I did find I felt a little bit bad. So, um, people were talking about how, okay, they're trees, they're cruel, they are, sure, like, yeah, they are things with agency, and anything with agency tends to be cruel. So, but they expected, like Heathen especially, and I think this is where he has a lot of growing up to do as well. When he thought about life and he thought about children, and but at the same time people don't realize that, okay, we're doing the same thing to the plants, especially in this universe where plants to a degree have some agency and to a degree have some feeling, maybe not to the degree that we expect them to have, not anymore, but there was a time when they did. And the callous way with which we treat life, uh, that does not come in the form of human beings, right? That as a vegetarian, I felt really good that that was being highlighted. That, okay, plants. I mean, as a kid, there was the point where I wanted to be a tree. So I just felt really nice that okay, maybe I could have been pretty cool as a tree. So um overall great chapter. I like anything to do with plants. If in the future we get to see not a druid but like a botanist, I wonder if there's an author who's a botanist who gets to interact with these people who maybe gets to help the dryad seed and all. That would be. Wasn't there a botanist in the dyed lands? Wasn't there somebody who cataloged all the plants and was presumed to be dead? I would be so happy if they are not. And I would
There
be
was an explorer in the Tidelands who died. Like that was one of the Earthers that Daly's group found in Volume 7. They they were exploring and like taking notes about all the plant life in the Tidelands, and they died.
did we get a confirmation that did we find a body?
Um, hmm. I'm not sure. I don't think we did.
Could it be that they just lost their notes?
I think it's unlikely, but you never know with Paranava. Never know.
Could it be that the author, when the time swap happened, they became like this druid who could live for hundreds of years and who might be able to help them? Just
That'd be
saying.
pretty crazy. That'd be pretty darn crazy.
Yeah, like just putting it out there. Pirate, if you're
Yeah.
listening to this, please take this into consideration. All right. That's about it. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Yash. Um, next up is Mr. Europe. Go ahead.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the chapter. I thought it was I thought it was great the way that it was all framed around the negotiation, and I'm really big fan of when there are multiple groups that all want the same thing in different ways, and as long as it's not like based on a misunderstanding or something like that, that they're honestly talking about what they each want, and they all disagree and have a conflict because of it. Uh, I really enjoyed how there were like two kind of themes throughout the chapter. I felt the first was that everyone on the online side was very competent the whole time. Um, like none of them did like really stupid mistakes. They all did pretty well at all their roles. Like they all managed to fulfill what they were doing, and like they set things up and managed to even fight. We had Volant the Ash who was assassinating away, and the obviously Visveri doing his thing, and Lionette doing her pact trap. Uh, and yeah, just I really enjoyed how they all like no one had the idiot ball on their side really. Yeah, it was very enjoyable. And the other theme I noticed was the whole growing up thing, of course, with Nanette and Heathen. But also, you had Bird having to abandon the is it war and actually doing real diplomacy as a leader. Always funny how that makes them grumpy. And everyone else as well. You have your Risveri and your Talitavarian and stuff with their just going, having to deal with these kind of asshole puppets. Really liked it. My favorite moments were probably whenever it cut back to Visophasin in his cage, just being very annoyed and doing dry banter from a wooden prison.
Yeah, South Pacific was very funny. And you're right. Everyone was very competent in how they like approached everything in this chapter, and that was great. It really shows that the inn is just getting competent help now. Like they're all advancing in their roles and they know what they're doing. And it's great to see.
Even Toady tried his very best to get in on the drug trade.
Yeah, Toady is Toady. Let's just say that. Anyways, thank you, Mr. Europe. Let's read. Or Asteria has joined us. Asteria, do you have any general impressions for the chapter?
No, not that anyone hasn't already said. So I will let people
Okay.
keep sharing and chatting. But thank you for checking in and asking. And hello, everyone.
All right, thank you, Asteria. Let's just read the comments now. Mystical Pie says, I love seeing the more sensitive side of Hesperia and also Nanette and Heathen maturing a bit. It was also really interesting to see Lionette grow as a negotiator / buffer and how she sees her priorities. Like Hesperia said, I would have expected her to ask for some unity for comfort. It does seem like Riss and Fasafison will be helping Raxo, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Also, Dragon Lord of War is still alive. Yeah, that was definitely one of the lore drops. We're gonna talk about those in a minute. Brack says they lost their rose tinted glasses and saw the old trees for what they were. Racist ghosts with delusions of grandeur, with less tact than the kids they were trying to press gang into a life of babysitting a tree in the Tidelands. Yeah, basically, those trees. I wouldn't even call it racist. Like they don't even think of these other people as real beings. Basically, they're worse than racist. Bleachel says elements come from shamblers is huge. Elementals, I think, is what you meant, Bleachel. Mike says, really enjoyed the chapter. I imagine if a time dilation happened around negotiations, it might actually play out similarly like this. Bird's war scene and Risky trying to show respect and humility is something I really liked. Very strong chapter overall. I'll come back to you, Ernalio. Brack says, it's kind of funny how Riss is getting the same wake-up call as the kids. Never saw anyone that was older with authority over him mess up or make mistakes. That's actually a very good point, Brack. This is basically like seeing Fythia's cousins or other family or whatever, people he would expect to be like Fythia, who he respects greatly, just completely make him see how horrible they are. Like they're just idiots, basically. They're nothing like Fythia, and he's getting this giant wake up call as that happens. Anyways, thank you everyone for your general impressions. Let's move on to the first question, which is why I skipped over you, Ernalio, because we're gonna talk about what subtle lore drops did you notice this chapter? Because there were a lot of them. There were a lot of lore drops. And Ernalio says, lore drops I noticed the new name for Lucifen, Sholtfell. I don't know how to say that. Also, the Dryads know about the water under the ground and call it the water below. The purple and red monsters / spires in the crossroads have some connection to nature beings but can't grow in great woods. Dragon Lord of War is confirmed alive and slumbering. Also, I can't wait for foolish sword master who has drowned his senses in drink to go on Tails' list of aliases on the wiki. Yeah, that's a great one. But yeah, you're right. There's so many tiny little lore drops from the Grove Lords, Grave Lords, whatever you call them, Glade Lords. And if anyone notices any other ones, I'll just go through the ones that Ernalio talked about and the ones I noticed as well. Or like the Dryads talking about the water underground is very interesting because yeah, like that's something that if anyone knows about it, it would be the tree spirits who basically have roots that could possibly reach down below there. And it's interesting that they think of it as just like death, basically. That's automatic death. And it's like, okay. So that's nothing to mess around with ever. Also, the purple and red monsters and the spires haven't some connection to natural beings is very interesting, because when we saw them in the crossroads, it was like they don't seem natural at all, and it kind of makes you wonder what um, natural force they're like representing. The orange the orange monsters were very fiery, basically, and so maybe they are something to do with fire in some form. I don't know. The purple ones, though, were a hive mind in many ways, and it's like, okay, so what kind of natural forces are these? Who knows, really? Um, Dragonlord confirmed alive and slumbering. I thought it was very interesting how they how the Glade Lords talked about the Dragon Lord of Wardo. They specifically said, here, let me find it. Let me just find the quote. They said, no one will trust a child to any dragon, let alone that monstrous she-thing of war. Let her slumber until she remembers her loyalty. So that phrasing, let her slumber until she remembers her loyalty, makes me think that they could wake her up at any time, but they're just like, no, let's let her continue to slumber. And that also makes me think they had something to do with her slumbering. So it's like, huh? What did they know? What did they know? And where is the Dragon Lord of War? Other things, other things I noticed. Well, actually, let's just go to the chat real fast. Miss Europe
Do you want
says,
me to read through?
"Sure, go ahead."
Okay, Mr. Europe says apparently the Veltress would try and wrestle actual giant ancient sentient trees often enough that it's one of the main things mentioned about them. Mick says were the pillars of the crossroads the people of Bellavere was afraid of. Yash Ketchum says the Bloodfield Shamblers were cray. Mr. Europe says they assumed that that was the purple and orange plot points lead to Balaros. And that's everyone.
Thank you, Asteria. Um, yeah, there's a lot of plot points pointing to Belarus, and it's going to be very fun for Aaron there. I think that's going to be like the second half of the volume. This current plotline feels like very much like a volume end, but at the same time, I feel it's way too early for a volume end in the volume. So it's more like a mid-volume high, basically. So it's going to be very interesting to see.
But
Um,
are we moving to a different plot point after with the poll that went up after
oh
this?
no,
Like
that
this?
poll was for a comic from Enderin.
Oh,
They're
okay, I
they
missed that.
yeah, they specifically Pat Evans specifically mentioned in the poll that the current plot line is going to go until the conclusion of it, which is something
Okay,
something they
gotcha,
do
gotcha.
for end of volumes too, which is very interesting. So this is, and they also said it could go into January. They don't even know if they're going to be able to finish this plot line in
Because I
December,
thought
which
I saw
is
the two poll options were like the
Mhm.
horns and the clown, and those were
um,
previous poll options, and we decided
yeah.
they lost the last one.
hmm I
Anyway,
don't.
okay,
Yeah.
don't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine. You're fine. You're the co-host. You have to interrupt.
Well, I mean, I can be interrupting in a playful, hilarious manner, or interrupting a serious train of thought, which is what you were on.
um, but yeah, Belarus is being set up to have a ton of plot lines coming up, and that's great. I've been wanting to see the Tidelands for so long. This seems like our segue into the Tidelands is going to happen at some time in the not horribly distant future. Mick says, the Dragon Lord of War was described as calcified. I was thinking it might be a dragon that confused with the Earth. Around it, in some ways, it's like personal trick, like how Terry can change the scales. And yeah, that's true. Um, that might be a part of her being um, like a protector of the forest, because it did seem like she was at one point in the past another protector of the Vale Forest, and she kind of turned her back on it, which is very interesting to see. Bleach Soul, you wanted to speak.
Yeah. Actually, the most I found interesting is that the water below and the Shambler will become elementals. I think the water below was what's his face eater. I didn't think he was dead because it's fantasy and unless the body is there and it's burned to crisp, I don't believe anybody's dead. But yeah, apparently it kills. So that's actually an interesting thing to explore. Maybe it has something to do with City of Death, the underground, the dungeon. So yeah, and the Shamblers to elementals. I mean, that's quite. I think that's very important because that might bring back the forests and. And yeah, and I hope like Lionette gives some Shamblers to the Knolls so they can replace their Earth Elemental. So I think yeah, these are like major hints or major lore drops that requires a lot more elaborations, to be quite frank. But it's a great thing to have to talk about. Thank you.
Yeah. In terms of Face Stealer, I always like what was it, Grass Shell? No, not Grass Shell. The adventurer Antinium, whose name I forget. Infinity something? What's his name?
Pair.
Infinity Pair, thank you. Infinity Pair got a skill that was I watched it die or something like that. And so I always took that to mean that Face Stealer was for sure dead. But obviously skills aren't confirmation, but I don't think we're ever gonna see Face Stealer again. My theory about the water below is it's somehow connected to the last tide. Like it's not the last tide is constantly like um having water dumped down into a giant hole in the world. So it's like, okay, how is that water coming back? And I think the water below connects to it in some way. Um but yeah. Yeah, she wanted to speak.
Yeah. Um, what was Taltaverion saying about not enough soil for it to grow? Like, I didn't understand that at all. Like,
So I think the what he meant was like the right soil conditions. So there wasn't anywhere in the world that was magical enough, I suppose, to host a world tree slash this dryad in like the proper like could actually grow this dryad.
right. Okay. Like, so that was one thing I found interesting. Another thing, the tree in Oteslia, it could bloom, but they're purposely keeping it shunted. So to be able to maximize benefits from it, I guess. I wonder what that means. I wonder what the drakes are doing to keep it shunted. Or are they even doing it knowingly? Or is it something that initial drakes did and then it's just been passed down from generations? And the knowledge of why it's being done, whatever they're doing, of why they're doing it, has just been lost to time. So that would be interesting to see if we get another Roteslia chapter. If we get anything Sire focused, that would be interesting to see. I don't think it was as easy as using the magic of the tree to grow a dragon. I think there's a little bit more. Um, because because in reference of keeping magic shunted, I don't know who said this, but someone said that natural suppression of magic is just not possible, right? So even in the new lands, something is keeping the magic suppressed, and I wonder if it's the dragon lord of war. that's keeping the magic suppressed so that they're not disturbed. Or something like that. Maybe somewhere in the maybe when the new lands came up, the Dragon Lord of War came up with it. But they were just sleeping. But now they're there. Now they're on land and above water. Because I think Teriak said at some point that they're underwater somewhere. So yeah, like the fact that magic is being suppressed in the new lands and there's possibly a way to bring it back to the new lands was like a bit of low drop that I really found fascinating and relevant to the overall plot.
Yeah, so that lore drop in particular, um, we do know something about what's going on in the new lands, and we know that there are areas that are less affected, and there are areas where there's like concentrated. The magic is really just completely gone. So it's like there are different sinkholes, basically, of magic where it's all being drained away. So I'm not sure if it's the Dragon Lord, because if it was the Dragon Lord, I would expect it to all just be evenly sucking away across the entire area. But instead, it's like there are different zones which are worse and less bad.
Perhaps it's something on the crossroads, which is like
Mhm.
pulling magic from this side onto the other side.
Yeah, that could be it too.
Yeah.
This is very it's interesting because yeah, there shouldn't be anywhere in the world where magic is just completely naturally gone. So we know there's something there. But thank you, Yash. Asteria, do you mind reading the comments?
Sure. Let's see. So Ernalio says they think the Dielands is one of the most interesting but also dangerous places a dryad could come from. They imagine that they would be incredibly strange and dangerous, even by the standards of dryads. Mick says Valent not being noticed or recognized by the Gladelorbs could imply the crown was taken during the vampire era. And Ernalio says they think the intruders are the Frailing city that was in the Dielands and developed alone for hundreds of years.
I agree about the intruders thing. Yeah.
And did
Intruders
we
could
read
also.
out Mix and Bleach Souls from earlier?
Uh-huh, we did.
Oh yeah, Mix. Yeah, I think I missed Mix. Mix said that the Dragon Lord of War was described as calcified. They think it might be a dragon that could fuse with the earth around it in some ways, as it was a personal trick, like how Terry could change his scales. And that's everyone.
All right, thank you. Also, Sari, if you wouldn't mind picking the next question, we're gonna wrap up with this question. But Ernalio, you're right. I think the intruders could be the Fairling City, but also, we know that Nears and the other companies are trying to push back the Diedland creatures, so those could be the intruders too. Just like the people moving into the Diedlands to push them back.
All right. So for our next question, let's see. A lot of these are sort of speculations and what you think will happen. Let's do. Let's see. Trying to think. What do you guys want to speculate on the most? Um, let's go with dragons. Well, no, we already kind of talked about dragons. Let's talk a little bit more about the Dyed Lands. I know we talked a little bit about this, but you guys seem to be on this conversation topic from comments earlier. So, what do you think the intruders are in the Dyed Lands? Gunslingers, Jungle Tales, Clown? Like, do you think they're new characters, old characters, characters that we know? What do you think's going on there? Wiggles, any thoughts as people respond?
Um, hmm. Well, like I said, I do think it's just like the whole group of people. They're moving into the Diedlands, which could include the jungles, or sorry, it could include the gunslinger. Now that I think about it, um, clown could be one, but I'm really interested in that Furling village. Like I'm very interested the Frailing village that was lost in the Dylands, because they've had 600 years of growth, and it's very possible, very possible, they're just dead. Like that's 600 years alone in a named ranked zone, or named ranked death zone, which is like, okay, that's a very big problem for them. But if they survived, like just imagine if they survived, what kind of people they'd become and what they would have had to have accomplished in that time. So I'm really interested in meeting them and seeing what happened. Well, otherwise, yeah. Other intruders. I feel like we're gonna have some weird. We're gonna have some secrets revealed in the Dylands, like for sure. I, and I'm really looking forward to that. Maybe we'll get some goblins in there. Actually, we could get
That would
some
be
goblins.
pretty cool if we did.
Yeah. Any thoughts on your part, Asaria?
No, I don't have any speculations at the moment. I think I don't know. I don't know if we have enough information yet to kind of make our best guess, but it's fun to speculate, like, who it could be. Mick says they want it to be the gunslinger. Xander says frailing death rank adventurers. Yash Ketchum, what do you think?
Yash, you there?
Yeah, sorry, I was on another thing.
No
What is
worries.
it? Yeah. I think it's the goblins, and I just wonder if there have been any new goblin lords in the 600 years that have passed in the Tidelands. And the reason why we're seeing the kind of new goblins that are coming out, new, old, goblins that speak goblin, and they've been speaking to Nerin, and they've been trying to find the real Erin. I wonder if Erin has sort of become this mythical figure amongst goblins, who perhaps in the Tidelands have had 600 years to create her into this sort of mythical figure. Um, and I wonder if now we already know that creatures are coming out of the Tidelands. What's to say goblins who are already in the Tidelands are not coming out of the Tidelands? And these are goblins who've had 600 years to, in a very isolated area, who've had 600 years to sort of um, exist and develop. So that could be really interesting.
Thank you, Yash. All right, Bleach Soul says the nuts level is up. Level up is interesting. GDI is preparing her to reclaim her witch class. And Samu, what do you think?
Yeah, I was thinking that the intruders from the perspective of the trees, I don't think they are people in any sense. So, like for example, the Freilings were already in the forest from the start, so calling them intruders now all of a sudden, or even goblins that live there, would be weird in a sense because they've always been there, and just why would they now call them intruders? And on the other hand, all the other external groups who fight in the Deadlands, for example, the rear heroes and also Nears, I don't think they've been going into the Deadlands so far yet, because I don't think that the rear heroes have made it further into the forest than Nears and his troops. So I don't think that those kind of people are the intruders, but more like intruders from the perspective of a forest. So something in a forest that's not quite right, and I think it has something to do with the color creatures in the Deadlands, because we've also seen that weird creature that Aaron has met that was like a symbiotic creature, and it didn't seem quite like an animal. And I think that I'm not totally sure on the creatures from the Deadlands anymore. but I think it sounds like they're not exactly animals either. So I think the intrusion aspect or the intruders could be something of a animal plant hybrid that those creatures are, or the origin of that are really intruding into the forest. And that's more or less what makes the plants or the trees in that conclave call them intruders instead of some random, like, not that many soldiers or whatever.
Absolutely. Data Lord says super goblins that haven't had to deal with antagonistic leveling peoples for 700 years. Oh my, Yash Kensha, your response.
What if it's seam walkers? Like, not not like big stream walkers, or not these uh Thulian sorry, oh my god, what's his name? The guy who writes the horror thing. Anyways, not like crazy horror this thing, but like theme walkers
Stephen
who.
King.
Hmm? Not Stephen King. No, the other guy who wrote about Cthulhu.
Oh, Lovecraft?
Yeah. Not exactly Lovecraftian horrors, but more like fears. I don't know, seam walkers basically. Because what else could be intro, like Samu said, like I think Bleach Soul said, what if they're just like what if they're just not natural to their environment? And again, this area has not seen anyone in 600 years. So even normal beings that could have lived there 600 years ago could be considered intruders. But if we're talking about true intruders in a cosmic sense, it could be either seam walkers. It could be maybe some of the gods that are missing. There is a god who's missing, right? I think the dancing man fell off the side of the earth, I think.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Who's missing?
The Tamarath and Norshal went through like a hole in the world and left in world, so they're kind of missing.
Hmm. Then I don't think it's them. But yeah, like somebody, uh, it could either be the intruder, like it could either be seam walkers, or it could just be earthers. People who are not off, wouldn't they be intruders? Because they're simply not off here. So earthers could have ended up created a civilization of their own in the Dyed Lands and existed for 600 years.
Gotcha. Mick says another idea would be that the Vault of Souls was placed near the Dylands on the continent, maybe on purpose. Xander says perhaps it is one of those spaceships that is from the fleet that Ryoka met, the ones that put the stick on the ship, though they think this is very unlikely. Bleach Soul, you had comments?
Yes, I think it's either like seams walkers or ghosts from the Deadlands, because it doesn't make sense like Freelings or goblins or humans or anybody else like to be called invaders. I think it's something like unnatural or something not of this world to be called invaders. So I think it's either seam walkers or ghosts. Uh, Maybe there's something else or something whatever, but I think it's not like what we think as invaders. Probably like it's not like humans or goblins or something.
Gotcha.
So
I mean,
yeah,
you like real just interjecting. Mr. Europe says that it should be noted that the word is trespassers. So invaders and trespassers are slightly different interpretations. Does that change your answer at all?
no,
Okay.
because trespassing is also like illegally crossing a border. I know, like it's not like try to attack it or something, but it's maybe not Seems Walker, but probably ghosts then from the Deadlands that
Gotcha.
can't like they stuck there.
So kind of trespassing against the borders of the world or the afterlife and the living.
Yeah, but there were a lot of ghosts came already to the in world. Some of them stayed, and most of them like left. But I think maybe they can't leave in the Dyad Land. Maybe something stopping them from leaving.
Gotcha.
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Wiggles, any other thoughts as people are typing up final answers?
I don't have anything else to add on this. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add.
Okay, well, why don't you choose the next question while I read off the final responses? Mystical
Alright.
Pie says everyone is taking the Glade Lords at face value, but they feel like we should keep in mind their unique perspective when we think about who the trespassers might be, who the trespassers are, rather. So I think that's a good point. You do have to kind of consider it from the perspective of the speaker. I am interested if this is going to be like a major big reveal, and Pirate is dropping hints that we're going to like look back and be like, how did we not see this? Or if this is just kind of building up the mystique, and the Glade Lords are just, they have a different interpretation of the world, as the unicorn kind of hinted at the start of the chapter. Mick says, well, that's why they thought the Dyedlands might have had a sudden evolution of the monster types and maybe a society built around them, hence the gunslingers group running into a hostile group of people. Yeah, it's very interesting to sort of figure out what is going to happen, but I am definitely eager to see the big reveal. Wiggles, what is our next discussion question?
Let me just post it in chat. What do you think will be Lionette's capstone? What do you think of Lion's growth as a leader and a mother? So we actually saw a lot of Lionette this chapter. This was a heavily Lionette focused chapter, and it's one of the it really showcased how well she's been doing for a long while now in terms of just growth. And Volume 10 has showcased her a lot, which is good. We didn't get as much of her in Volume 9. I know there were quite a few people who wanted to see her more. I think the line that stood out to me the most in this chapter for her like actions here is that Elaine would be proud of her. And uh, uh, like just thinking about how that would affect Lionette's thoughts. It's like, yes, Eileen is definitely someone Lionette knows is very smart, very capable, but at the same time, Lionette does not want to be her mother. Like she just doesn't want to be Eileen. So it's like it might be a bittersweet thing for her to realize that she like right here what she just did would be something that Eileen would be fully on board with. Otherwise, I'm not sure about what her capstone will be. I've never been able to predict capstones too well, especially for side characters where a lot of it depends on the arc they actually go through to get to level 40. I do think
It also depends
Lionel,
on like what Pirate's plans are for the character, and we don't
yeah,
know all of those.
yeah. I do think one thing Lionette has been focusing on a lot lately is that she's a mother above all else. And this entire arc is revolving a lot around Mersha. So if she does get 40 in this arc, I think it has to involve her being a mother as well. Like and get skills based around that, like her mother class.
Don't forget
Um
that when we started this arc, a lot of it also revolved around how Lionette viewed herself as a princess, right? And what
yeah,
her role is there and with the inn.
yeah.
And, I would say that her role of mother is absolutely important to her, especially with the ending of that chapter or this chapter.
Mhm.
But I think it's also important to keep things in perspective where she's also thinking about her role within her kingdom. She's thinking about her future with the inn.
That's
So
true.
I would say like Pirate's usually really good about balancing different aspects of a character. I would be surprised and kind of disappointed if her capstone skill ends up just being her role as a parent.
Well, I don't think it would be only that. I think it would just include that,
Yeah,
I
okay.
think Yeah, that wouldn't be it alone. I just think the way it's going right now, she's going to consolidate her mother class somehow into princess.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just to your comment earlier about how she's kind of like realizing that she's kind of like her mother in a few things and horrified.
Yeah.
There's that period of transition from sort of teenager to adult that a lot of people go through, and there's a sort of
Mhm.
horrifying realization that you're a lot more like your parents than you realized. And then there's the realization that that's not necessarily a bad thing, depending on your, your background and your experience with your
Mhm.
parents. And that feels like kind of the journey that, Lionette's on. She's a fairly young mother, and she's an adopted mother at that, right? She wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily thinking of these things. She was a child herself at the beginning of the story and quickly had to mature when she took on raising Mishra and now Nanette. And so she's what? She's like 20? 21?
I think she's 19 or 20. Yeah.
She's so young. And out of all of the children, right, out of all of her mother's children, she's probably the one that's closest to her mother in maturity at this point, based on everything she's been through. And so it is kind of funny to see her realization and her growing up a bit and realizing that her parents aren't quite as awful as she thought. But
Yeah.
I just that's a very distinct period of maturing and growing older that is happens to I think a lot of people in real life, and it's just kind of funny to see Lionette going through.
Poor Lionette. Poor Lionette.
Do you want
Excellent
to
points,
read
Anastasia.
what?
Um, excellent points. You're right.
Do you want to read through
Um,
the responses and then circle back to the
yeah.
to Yash and Samu?
Yeah. Mick says danger sense to mother sense.
It's going to be constantly going off. Like it doesn't.
Yeah, constantly. Xander says repopulate in. That's a scary thought for a capstone. Arenalio says, I don't know about what skills she'll get, but it would be interesting if she advances her princess class to a queen class at 40. Maybe it's still too early for that, lol. Though she might need more mentality changes to step into a queen role.
She
Yeah,
does
I
have to
don't.
be queen of something.
Yeah, she does have to be queen of something. So it would have to, she would have to like completely reframe her role in the end, around her being like the queen of the end, which kind of conflicts with Aaron, but we'll see if that happens.
Yeah, that's a plot point that I think a lot of people have that speculated about. Like what
Mhm.
that was kind of addressed when Aaron was revived and kind of came back, but kind of not. Like that's building, right? As Leonette kind of
Yeah,
comes into her own, how is that gonna work with Aaron, right? Because Leonette let's face it, she runs the inn. Like Aaron is never there at this point. But Aaron is the innkeeper. That's her whole deal. So like I'm curious as to how if it's a conflict and how that's gonna resolve itself.
yeah. And one thing I think that Erin's mentality has shifted about her own end too. She's now the wander keeper, right? She's she can wander around the world now and still be an innkeeper to anyone, really. She doesn't actually need the physical location of the wandering inn to be like hers and hers alone. She could share the whole authority over it with Lionette at the end of the day, I think. But it's definitely something that we'll get more of, I think, when they meet back up. But for now, Lionette's undoubtedly in charge of the inn. Mick says she finally declares herself queen of the inn. Let's be real. Xander says one of the queens of the inn. Also, the average age of the visit to the Eltros Glade Dwarves was not 19, it was 12,345.
They did the math.
Mick says decree of the inn. Ooh, that would be an interesting one. Mystical Pie says Lionette's growth this volume to me parallels the rapid growth she underwent when Aaron was in Kellum. I've really been enjoying the direction Pirate is taking her, especially that she isn't solely defined by being a mother. Yeah, she's definitely not. That's not what like completely defines her. It's just an aspect that she's been leaning into more of lately. But she still is a princess as well. Mick says, Scion, princess of the Solstice family. Huh, that'd be fun. Xander says, patron of furniture makers. Yes, she definitely needs to make her own furniture line. I think we're good on this question.
Well,
Asteria,
Yak
if you
and Samu haven't spoken.
they haven't. I'm so sorry. I completely forgot we hadn't allowed them to speak yet. Yes, go ahead.
So we're gonna see class consolidation, of course. We're gonna see her mother class consolidated to her princess class, and perhaps it's gonna be something like princess guardian or m- mother of the inn, or because she doesn't just take care of Marsha and Nanette, she takes care of all the children who are under her, maybe not in a motherly capacity, but if there is an orphan and if that orphan comes to the inn, they automatically become Lynette's child in a way. So I think it's going to be something like that, where we'll see like a something sort of a guardian, but who doesn't really, more in the sense of like a parental authority instead of like a soldier or a watchman. So something like that, like guardian of the inn, or more of a protector, again not in a violent way but in a parental authority way. So that's something I see happening, like a class consolidation. uh, I don't know if this is cultural now, like in terms of a capstone, this thing. I don't know if it's quite cultural, but back here in like southeast and southern Asia, a mother's a mother is like a highly um, you know um, glorified figure, right? Like mothers are put on pedestals. Your mother is equal to the goddess of the family, sort of, right? So, and also in a similar vein, a mother's sacrifice is highly respected and coveted. So I don't know if she'll get it, but one of her capstone skills could be mother sacrifice, where sort of like Harry Potter, where if she chooses to sacrifice herself, she basically, in a way, that sacrifice is then used to protect her kids. Uh, I don't like it, but when mother related skills were talked about, a mother sacrifice is like the first thing that came into my head. I really hope it doesn't happen, but I'm thinking of something like Boku no Hero, where they put themselves through pain, or they sacrifice a part of themselves to ensure protection for others, or to get something else, something similar to like what the monks of Sondheim do. So that's in the vein of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. The sacrificial skills like that can feel bad in the case of like really beloved characters, but it all depends on how Pirate Eva like goes through with it, like how they write it. There's no bad storylines. There's only bad ways of telling them, in my opinion. And it could be very interesting depending on how they do that. But thank you, Yash. Samu, you're up next.
Yeah, so my thoughts on this, I don't know exactly what a capstone could be like, but I think that we've seen different parts of Lionet's thing so far. So one thing was the whole game night, let's call it that, and now this was the more out of the inn experience, very also, and she got skills on the diplomatic end of things a little bit, while on the other things it was more like also a little bit about the diplomatics, but more about the enforceable diplomatics. And I think there are some things that we already know that Lionett is basically on the plot list for example, the whole thing with Rex now and the thing with Ilris in the north. And I think those two things, one is more, the Ilris thing is totally diplomatic against other nobles sooner or later, and the Rex thing is again more of a, or Mersha thing now is more of a martial part of what's gonna happen probably. So Mersha has something to do with the Titan, and that Titan needs to be killed, and all of that I think is really the different experiences we've seen so far, and that are going to come look a little bit like a lot of different aspects of more or less a noble life. And I think also the skills she gained in recent levels, they are really rounding her out as a noble power player, more or less, that could then butt heads with the ladies in the north. And I think, like, yeah, that's more or less what's happening right now with Lionett, and that with her level 40 capstone, she's the one who's going to go against Bethel as well in the for the inn, because Eren has bigger fish to fry, and like hobnobbing with Magnolia as well, because I think they mesh better together than Eren and Magnolia, for example. And I think with those levels, that could work really well in the long run, both with skills more on the violent side that we've seen used now, and more on the diplomatic side as well. And the other thing I was thinking of was that. Oh, sorry, I lost my thought. I'm done.
That's okay. Thank you, Samba. Anyone else have any thoughts? Asteria, do you want to pick the next question, or
Well,
do you?
Xander added Orphan Collector. If you,
Oh,
if you read,
I didn't see that. Orphan collector. Okay.
it's not even Orphan Collector. It's like Eren and Ryoka keep bringing back. Actually, it's Ryoka, right? Ryoka just keeps
Yeah.
bringing back kids and
Yeah.
like dumping them at the end. And then
That's
Eren is supposed to take
her.
care of them, and then Eren doesn't, and so it's Leonette. Like,
As we know from the Palace of Fates, Ryoka is never gonna be a mother. Oh god. Oh god.
oh man. All right. Okay, so changing it up a little bit, we kind of asked some questions like this last time I hosted, and I think there were some good responses. So keeping in mind, right, this is like, don't start being negative on the author. This is like, just, I'm interested to see where people found themselves maybe skimming or most immersed in the chapter. Which setting or scene did you wish maybe you could visualize better? Why? Or did you find one that like really stood out to you? This was a very visual chapter, both with emotion and with like the setting itself. And I'm intrigued to see like what kind of stood out to you guys, or maybe where you kind of found yourself skimming over the chapter and like why you might think that happened. Wiggles, did you have any ones that you were like super excited about, or places where you're like, not quite sure why this didn't work for me, or this didn't work for me? Any thoughts on that?
I think the parts I really like focused in on were Risveri's dealings with the Glade folk, and the end where Risveri is talking to Lionett, and kind of Lionett's just seeing him for what he is really here, and how Risveri is kind of becoming more than just that guy who once tried to kill Ryoka.
Oh,
And
do you remember people's reactions? People are like, he needs to die. Like, he was
yeah,
one of the most
I thought so too.
hated
Yeah.
characters.
Yeah, he was. His introduction just showed him off as like one of the worst people ever, and he's really just like, as we've delved into his character more, it's come to the forefront. It's just like, wow, this
Musician
isn't.
as well.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Um.
continue.
What parts that? Okay. Well, settings / scene. I wish the. Which part did I want better? Like more
Yeah, like what
setting.
did you want more of? You're like, I love this, but it could like I want to be just totally immersed in even more.
I think um the fight scene, really, like the battle between the Glade Lords and Brisvary and all that. I think that could have used like a bit more in depth um Passover. That's where I really would want it. As to which parts I found I was skimming over more, I think I think the beginning of the chapter, it started off slower. Yeah, the beginning of like the first couple pages of the chapter were where it was slower to me, where we were just getting into the Glade folk.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't it was just a little bit too slow for me. Like I felt like it could have been condensed down more and it would have been um it would have read better to me, but that's just like personal preference. I still liked it. It just was a slower part for me.
I was actually going to comment on that too, because that was where I wanted like more. I wanted to be able to visualize it better, right? You've got this scene where you've got this massive forest unfolding before you. And then the characters are commenting about how you don't have any insects or birds or any of the natural sounds of the forest. And then we get an explanation for it from it, or for it from the unicorn almost immediately. And I just think it would have been kind of cool to sort of see that like shown more than told, if that makes sense somehow, where they kind of slowly realize, or like, why is this weird? Why does this feel strange? Like, not just the time dilation effect that they mentioned, but just the fact that they're not hearing anything. Like this balance of we need to get on with the plot, but also like these kind of slow reveals where you're kind of immersed in the scenery a bit more. Because I think that would have been so cool, right? They're walking across the floodplains and then they're suddenly in a freaking forest that's supposed to be mimicking the old dryad forests, as far as the characters realize. And it's only like, the unicorn who knows any better, who's like, this is not an old forest. This is nothing like an old forest. You don't know what an old forest is, and it's dead. And he keeps like trying to hammer this point to them. And I think that would have been kind of, I wish there'd been more there, because I think that would have been really, really cool opportunity to really dive into like setting and scenery detail. But I really enjoyed like that playing out. I think that what really worked for me is we've gotten to know Teltrivion. Like he was this horny unicorn that slept with everything. He was kind of funny, ha ha ha. And as we've gotten to know him over these like chapters even more, he is just a bucket full of sorrow. My
Oh, I
goodness.
completely forgot to talk about Tailteveron. I loved him this chapter. Oh, it was so sad seeing him like this, but
Oh my
it
gosh.
was amazing. It was
Like
amazing.
that contrast between Leonette's love and her desperate like journey to try to save her kid, compared to him who's looking down at like he is it's been driven home. Every single freaking opportunity to try to save the forest has been lost. He is the last of his kind, right? He had that whole great speech last chapter about that. And then here we are at the end of the chapter, and like these are characters from the just like myth and legend come to life in this story, and we're seeing the end of a species. They've tried everything, they've done everything, everything's failed, they're the last da 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 da, but to be offered one more chance, maybe this is the one. And he's always said no, no, no. And then here we are at the end of the chapter, and he's looking down at the wand and all the hope and potential it could represent. Man, I love how Pirate has like really kind of seen that sort of subplot through. It's been one of my favorites, and this chapter is really just like driven it home. At least that for me. Did you have any
Yeah,
thoughts?
I completely agree with you on Tail just being great. I forgot to say like one of the scenes that I was like dialed in on the most was when Teltavrion killed the Sky Tree, and
Yep.
that whole part right there was just amazing. It was really well done. I love that part.
Yeah. I mean, Pirate is strong when it comes to character storytelling, especially the long game storytelling. But it was just so strong here with so many characters. It was just
Yeah.
really, really nice to see. Like, and especially that contrast ending. And he's just staring down at the wand while we know that Leonette's desperately racing off to try and save her kid. I'm just like, yep, yep, yep. Check, check, check. But it's within the greater context of multiple chapters. I think this is going to be harder or better for readers in the future. Like we've been having weeks in between the storyline, people reading it in one fell swoop. It's going to hit even stronger.
Absolutely.
Xander says they don't think they skimmed. Toadie's bit was fun, and his quotable quote they found really funny. The sadness of Rissy was very tear-worthy for them. Mr. Europe says they don't skim because they're not a barbarian. They do wish, however, they could visualize Rissaveri doing his weird growing plant to gritting. Xander says how full sadness Chalyon was and his attitude from dealings like these. Mick says at times the chapter scenes felt smushed to them, but they thought that played with how the chapter was set up with the time dilation. They really loved Heathen's scene with the swamp lady. Xander said, Nanette, go back and mug him. Yash Ketchum, what are your thoughts?
So I feel like over the past couple of chapters, I've been a lot bit critical of Pirate, and I feel really bad. So I want to be like a little bit tempered down. I'll start with the good bits where the immersion was absolutely solid. I loved the time dilation. You know what it reminded me of? Like when you're in school and when you're just waiting for the bell to ring and it's recess, but it doesn't feel like 5 minutes, it feels like hours. And anytime you don't want to do something and you have to do it, and that reticence just makes the time go slower. Like that's what I visualized it, and that's what that the time dilation bit was amazing because it seems so contradictory, right? That, oh no, it's only been 2 minutes, but it feels like it feels like 5 hours or whatever. And I was like, I can relate. Oh my god, this is what it feels like. And then when you're writing a paper and then time just speeds up, and then maybe that was what people were expecting, that a lot of time is passing by. But it wasn't. That was like that was pretty cool. And how it sort of plays tricks on you, where it's like, even though it's just been 2 hours, he then had to go and relieve himself 2 times because it felt like 8 hours. So that those were bits that were like really immersive. Something that took me out was, where is the tea coming from? Like, I know Pirate said mentioned it, that yeah, it's coming from Toadie, and like he had like tea leaves and hot water in his bag of holding and stuff. But I don't know, it just feels for a situation like that, you're having tea. That took me out a little bit. Um, and I did like Heathen appreciating water boobs. That was pretty cool. I will not lie. I also imagined water boobs, and it was pretty great. I imagined all the boobs. I imagined the wicker boobs, the water boobs, the rock boobs. It was all great. Um, then, like, truly, truly immersive. I suppose. Oh my god, the flower. The flower. I don't know if you guys have been seeing this, but there's this one on. Is it on YouTube or it's on some reels? But they have this Venus flytrap thing which eats insects and other, and they show it, like they show how they speed it up, and they show how the Venus flytrap just closes over any given insect or whatever. And that's what I imagined. I imagined a unicorn being eaten by a flower, and that was really cool. Another great immersive this thing. Something that took me out a little bit was the chess queen. But you know what? I imagined it in a very anime sort of way. It was immersive, but going from like this amazing, fantastical, forestry, very, very, um, very Irish folklore, like Celtic, not Irish, sorry, Celtic folklore setting. Two giant queen just wrecking everyone, giant chess piece wrecking everyone. That was crazy. That was crazy, but ultimately very fun. But yeah, um, the something that took me out of immersion. You know what? I really liked how they mentioned that okay, we can't hear the crickets, we can't hear anything. That actually helped me a lot because um, it helped me imagine that okay, like you know in those CG videos where they just populate everything with like endless plants or endless landscape so that it feels like you're in a very big space but it's just all artificially populated. That's what it felt like the area itself was very small but the illusion has been made in such a way that you feel like it's infinite. um Pretty cool. Immersion wise, it was great. My issue with this whole thing was I don't know why, but something about this particular chapter seemed very, it's not quite off, but different in a not very nice way. Maybe it was the writing. I did feel like some places where pacing, I think pacing was an issue. Not just in the initial bits, I think also like ultimately pacing was like throughout the whole chapter, pacing was a little bit of an issue. Um, the way maybe it was the sentence because pirate writes in a way that the emotions are conveyed through the way she writes when it's sometimes she writes shortcut sometimes they write shortcut sentences, sometimes it's very long and flowy and but it always fits the emotion of the scene. Here maybe because I was not able to process the emotion, I wasn't able to map the writing style onto the emotion. I didn't know what emotion I'm supposed to be feeling for me to be able to map the writing style, and that caused a little bit of dissonance for me. So yeah, that immersion, like good and bad parts of the chapter.
All right.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Yash. Samuel, you're up next.
Yeah, I think I was a little bit like I felt right after the chapter. I felt like I didn't really uh, wasn't really that immersed in one big scene in this chapter. But what I realized in the end was that it's really that different scenes for different characters really stuck with me. And I think even for the very side characters like Elosias, like the necromancer village head, however you exactly pronounce his name, I think he had this one scene where he made like a ground thing, undead ground thing, so he stopped something from the trials, and that kind of stuck with me as one. But also other scenes. Like I think Toadie's, I think was the weakest in my sense, but every character had this one scene. Rizzy with his introduction and with some other moments, Lionette had a lot of them, but all of those, like they really stuck with me, and as well as the lore drops. So it in the end, it wasn't like I really felt like one scene, but all the little parts of it really, I really remembered them well. And I think that's really nice that I kind of remember one, usually the most important thing of the chapter, what every character that did, even the small ones. And I think that's really, yeah, there's different chapters and how you read them. And this one was weird compared to others, I think. But those things, afterwards, I realized, okay, those things really stuck with me more than I had expected compared to other chapters where I'm really immersed in one big scene, but don't think much about everything else that happened in that chapter afterwards.
All right. Thank you, Samu. Baronalio says, one scene that stood out to me was when the Glade folk called Risveri a worm and rejected him. The scene stood out to me because it felt like it had strong emotional implications for Risveri. Absolutely. It absolutely did. Poor Risveri. Is there any final thoughts?
I'm good with this. Did you want to choose another question or wrap up recorded discussion?
Wrap up. I need to get going in just a few minutes.
Okay, well, thank you so much for hosting, and sorry I was late.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. One thing that everyone should know, and here is once this is posted on YouTube, everyone will already know. But on Tuesday, there's going to be a webcomic released for TWI, the 3rd, on December
Exciting.
3rd.
Super, super
It's
exciting.
exciting. Yes.
You guys should be
Yes.
checking that out.
Yes. Everyone should check it out. That being said, thanks for joining us for this after chapter discussion, and thanks for co-hosting with me, Asteria. I hope everyone has a good day.